Hare Krishna. So let's get started. Welcome to the ISKCON Portland Srimad Bhagavatam Sunday morning class. We will start with our Mangalacharan prayers and then we will get started. Let me share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, we can see that is true.
Okay, great. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुः श्रीयुतः पदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च वां विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। Welcome to the Bhagavatam class. We'll start with the invocation verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayet नयश्च प्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। So today we are going to talk about Dhritarashtra and Vidurji. We are continuing our discussion from Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse number 25. So here is the verse. So the context is that Vidurji has come exclusively for the deliverance of his brother Dhritarashtra. And that's all the business he carries out and leaves. So this is still his conversation with Dhritarashtra. It is almost coming to an end. He has said some very harsh words, and now he is trying to tell Dhritarashtra more or less cajoling and behooving him to leave this comfortable situation and go and focus his mind on the Supreme Lord, which he has not done all his life so far. So that is where we are, and this is one of the last few verses of the speech of Vidurji to Dhritarashtra, and then Dhritarashtra finally will get come to his senses and leave his home. So another very strong verse this that Vidurji speaks to Dhritarashtra. So that is the context of what is going on. Yeah. Is there any comment or question? Okay. So let us recite this verse. तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जिजीविषोः पै परैत्य अनिच्छतो जीर्णो जरया वाससीव. I'll recite it a couple of more times, then I'll request some other devotees to recite. तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जिजीविषोः परैत्य अनिच्छतो जीर्णो जरया वाससीव. तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जिजीविषोः परैत्य अनिच्छतो जीर्णो जरया वाससीव. Would anybody else like to recite the verse?
Actually, Bhagavatam Prabhu. तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जिजीविषो परत्यनिच्छतो जीर्णो जराया वाससि इव. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu and Prabhu.
Yes.
तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जिजीविषु परत्य अनिच्छतो जीर्णो जरया वाससि इव. Prabhu.
Thank you. Others?
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes. Vijay Lakshmi Mataji and then Vinod
Yeah,
Baba.
Hare Krishna. जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय.
Hare.
तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जीवितो परयति अनिश्चितो जीर्णो जराया वाससि इव. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Vidagdhamada Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Tasyapi tava dehoyam kripanasya jijivisho paratya anichchato jirno jaraya vasasi iva. Hare
Thank you. Anyone else?
तस्यापि तव देहोऽयं कृपणस्य जिजीविषो परति अनिच्छतो जीर्णो जराय वाससि वा. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Let's move forward. Tasya, of this, api, in spite of, tava, your, dehaha, body, ayam, this, kripanasya, of one who is miserly, jijivishoh, of you who desire life, para iti, will dwindle, anichitaha, even unwilling, jeernaha, deteriorated, jaraya, old, vasasi, garments, eva, like. So the translation is, despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. So that is the meaning of this verse. Once again, the verse is Tasyapi tava dehoyam kripanasya jijivishoh paraitya anichhato jirno. Para iti. So paraitya anichhito jirno jaraya vasasi iva. So tasya api tava deho yam. That tasya api tava deho yam. That in spite of this body of yours, kripanasya jijivishoh, that which has become you are very miserly. And jijivishoh means, as it is written here, you who desire life, or you desire to continue living. So why is he called miserly? Srila Prabhupada will explain very nicely, and large part of the purport is about that. Kripanasya jijivishoh, that one desires to live in a miserly way. Para iti will dwindle, anichitaha, even unwilling, and jirnaha, deteriorated. So para iti anichito jirno, that it will dwindle even if you don't want it to. That is all our situation. So much billions of dollars are being invested into anti-aging, but the body continues to dwindle. Jaraya vasasi iva. Just like garments will deteriorate, old garments will become old, and one day they will get torn. I still have a jeans that I love from 25 years old. I cannot fit in it, but it's all torn, and I somehow, try to keep patching it. It's one of my favorite pieces of cloth. It is so stupid, but still, trying to preserve it and extend its life. So very, very apt argument is given here, Jaraya Vasasi Eva, just like old garments. So let us read the purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The word Kripanasya Jijivisho are significant. There are two classes of men. One is called the Kripana and the other is called the Brahmana. So there is a distinction being drawn here. Two opposites, Kripana and Brahmana. The Kripana, or the miserly man, has no estimation of his material body. But the Brahmana has a true estimation of himself and the material body. The Kripana, having a wrong estimation of his material body, wants to enjoy sense gratification with his utmost strength. And even in old age, he wants to become a young man by medical treatment or otherwise. Just like Ajamil, he had children even though when he was very, very old. So continuing to enjoy even when you are very old. Dhritarashtra is addressed herein as a Kripana because without any estimation of his material body, he wants to live at any cost. Vidura is trying to open his eyes to see that he cannot live more than his term and that he must prepare for death. Since death is inevitable, why should he accept such a humiliating position for living? It is better to take the right path, even at the risk of death. I find it interesting, Srila Prabhupada writes, even at the risk of death, death is certain. Risk is something which may or may not happen. So, that's our situation. We don't realize that death is certain, and even then we try to save ourselves from it. Human life is meant for finishing all kinds of miseries of material existence, and life should be so regulated that one can achieve the desired goal. Dhritarashtra, due to his wrong conception of life, had already spoiled 80% of his achieved energy. So it behooved him to utilize the remaining days of his miserly life for the ultimate good. Such a life is called miserly, because one cannot properly utilize the assets of the human form of life. Only by good luck does such a miserly man meet a self-realized soul like Vidura, and by his instruction gets rid of the nations of material existence. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So once again, the verse is Tasyapi tava dehoyam kripanasya jijivishoh paraitya anichyato vajirno jaraya vasasiva. Translation: despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live even at the cost of honor and prestige. That's miserliness, even though honor and prestige is not part of the exact words, but Srila Prabhupada is bringing out the miserliness here. Your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. So his desire to continue to live, he's giving up his honor and prestige in return for his desire to live in his old and dwindling body. That's miserliness. That's exactly what miserliness means, that your another term is penny wise, pound foolish, or miserly, when somebody is trying to cling on to something useless and is not looking at the larger good that he can do to himself. That's called miserliness. So that is exactly what is happening here, that in order to just live a already dwindling in a dwindling body, but just to maximize his comfort a little bit more, he is giving up so much, his honor and prestige, as Srila Prabhupada writes in the translation. And then in the purport, he goes on to write the real thing, which is wasting his the human body that he has received. Where is it? Yeah, somewhere here it is that, the human form of life. Yeah. So that is what Dhritarashtra is wasting. So this is what is going on. And Vidurji is saying these words and is acting as his guru. He is showing him the right path. So yeah, here Srila Prabhupada writes, human life is meant for finishing all kinds of miseries of material existence, and life should be so regulated that one can achieve the desired goal. So he's wasting his one and only chance of human life for just extending a little bit comfort to his body. And that is real miserliness. So in our life, also, we must understand the importance of a guru. That is what I want to focus on in the class or in today's discussion. That how important it is for us to have, our situation is actually more worse than Dhritarashtra. We may not have overseen a world war like Dhritarashtra had, or be in such a sort of very kingly position with the entire empire at your disposal. But we have our little empire at our disposal, but we are also still acting like Dhritarashtra, wasting our life, our human life. And therefore, there is a need for people around us, just like Vidurji acted for Dhritarashtra. He had so many people, Dhritarashtra had so many people around him. Nobody, well, there were a few, very few, handful of people like Bhishma and Vidura, to some extent Drona, who were trying to give some sense to Dhritarashtra. But mainly it was Bhishma and Vidura. And Bhishma passed away during the battle or war. And so did Drona. Now only Vidura is left. So Vidurji has come back. And is basically acting like a strong guru, somebody who is showing the light. So Guru, it is mentioned here, when Guru gives Diksha, that is called, that the primary form of Guru is Diksha Guru. The Divyam Jnanam Yato Dadyat Kuryat Papasya Sankshayam. So that is called Diksha. Tasmat Diksheti sa prokta deshikais tattva kovidaihi. So those who have seen the truth call this as Diksha. What is Diksha? Divyam ya jnanam yato dadyat kuryat papasya sankshayam. So D stands for Divyam Jnanam Yato Dadyat. And Sha stands for Sankshayam. Kuryat Papasya Sankshayam, that they take away. So they give transcendental knowledge and then they take away our sinful reactions. So that is pretty much what Vidurji is doing for Dhritarashtra right now. He's giving him transcendental knowledge that you should get out of this material body or this at least materialistic situation, go to a solitary place and focus on the Supreme Lord. So we should have such people. Now today, many of us I see here on the Zoom are initiated devotees, and many may be aspiring for initiation, which means you have accepted a guru pada ashraya. That is the first step. Then Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam. So maybe you have not taken Diksha yet, that's okay, but maybe you have accepted a ashraya of the pada, of the feet of a guru. And even if that has not happened, you are listening to Srila Prabhupada very in a submissive way. So Pranipatena step has occurred, and then Pariprashnena and Seva will occur later. So that humble submission has occurred to Srila Prabhupada. So in any way, Guru Pada Ashraya has occurred, but Srila Prabhupada is not present here on the planet. And in many, many cases, our Diksha Guru, even our Shiksha Gurus are far away. It is the point I'm trying to make is that it is not a situation like Vidurji, where somebody will stand in front of you and shake you and bring you out of um, our lethargy or our forgetfulness that life is passing by and the clock has not stopped ticking. Like here Srila Prabhupada is saying that Dhritarashtra, due to his wrong conception of life, has already spoiled 80% of his life, 80% of his energy, whatever that calculation of 80% may be, but lost a huge majority of his life. And that is the case with many of us. And many of us, as I can see on the Zoom call, are fairly young. Maybe some are just got married, have small children. So there are some who are older, grown-up kids and retired and so on. So in various stages of life we have, some may have 10 years, who knows how many we have. We may not even have 5 minutes, but given some normal situation, course, we may have 5 years, 10 years, 30, 40 years. All this counts as very little time anyway. So we must have people, my point is, just like Vidurji. And Vidurji appeared out of his own love for his brother, Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra, we can say, is endowed because he's the son of Vyasadeva. So obviously he is a very special personality. He's not an ordinary person. We do not even have such a strong lineage. Being the son of such a of the Vyasadeva is considered to be an incarnation of the Lord, a Shakti Avesh avatar. So we do not have any such facilities or any such anchors, any such gurus in our life. We may have Srila Prabhupada, we may have Diksha Guru, but not somebody like Vidurji who can really hold us to account, shake us, give us a shock treatment, and bring us out of our lethargy and our sleep. So what should we do in that situation? And many of us, sorry, and many of us need that. And even if we think we don't need it, we must add it to our life. We must definitely think that am I making enough or a good enough or acceptable level of progress spiritually in my life or not? And if not, then who will shake us out of our situation and bring us on the path that we can utilize whatever rest of our life is left? For Dhritarashtra, maybe 20% is left. For us, who knows how much is left? It could be even 2% or maybe 50%. I don't know. So, how can we create some structures in our life that will help us to remind constantly that we are the clock is ticking, like it is said, the clothes are getting older, whether you like it or not. Just by passage of time, the clothes are getting older. Jaraya vasasi iva. And time is not going to stop, and our body will continue to dwindle. So, while the clock is still alive, while the clock has not shut down, as in while till we are alive, how do we constantly remind ourselves to continue to make devotional progress? That is the question. In our practical, in our life, we do not have somebody like Vidur in our life. So, any thoughts? I just wanted to see whether I have some thoughts, but which I will cover. But I just wanted to see what do devotees think about this.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. You brought out a very wonderful point. There is, like they say, there is no replacement for life guidance, and that applies especially to in the bhakti marg. So, yeah, even though a lot of us have Diksha Guru, but communication with the Diksha Guru can always be comes. It's very rare. We cannot have like one-on-one guidance for each and everything in our spiritual life, and this is where we have like a live guidance mentoring system that helps one develop very nice. So I just have one side question, not directly related to this. If it is okay, can I ask?
Sure.
Okay. So here in this case, Vidurji, I mean, Dhritarashtra didn't really accept Vidur as a guru, right? He just came and kind of. I know his position. He's his brother, and he's a extremely exalted devotee. But still, Dhritarashtra wasn't looking forward for any advice from him. So it's kind of like he showed up and he's assuming the position of the guru. Because in Bhagavad Gita, it is like that vidhi pratena. So basically, you have to surrender to a guru, inquire in a submissive way. In this case, how can we assume that Dhritarashtra has accepted Vidur as his guru?
Yes, good, very good question. So again, the point is that when we say guru and all this, the mental conception that comes up is that, okay, I have surrendered and there is some kind of a official process. Okay. So that is true, like a marriage ceremony. But let us say, a boy and girl love each other and they are, living together and they're almost living like a husband and wife. And marriage ceremony is just a stamp of an official stamp on top of that. I'm talking about modern world. I'm not saying that that is the traditional way or something like that. But I'm just saying, so if you see Vidurji and Dhritarashtra throughout his life, Vidurji was always looking out for Dhritarashtra, was always advising him. If you read the earlier portions of pre-war portion of Mahabharata, you will see that so many times Vidurji would give advice to Dhritarashtra. And even at the time when, and Dhritarashtra would listen. So this is the thing, you don't have to like take an official, have a havan or a fire sacrifice, and there's nothing official about it. But Dhritarashtra used to depend on Vidur for many, many, many things, just for the most important things, because his extreme hankering or his attachment to his son was so strong that he overrode what Vidurji was saying earlier, but he would listen to it, and Vidurji knew that this person most of the time listens and is at least willing to listen. For example, before, when the Pandavas had lost the game and Draupadi was disrobed or attempted to be disrobed, and such a, like, that was the turning point of, the whole Mahabharat war basically happened because of that one incident. If that had not happened, everything else was forgivable. But that disrobing of Draupadi was something that, nobody could accept. And when that happened, Vidurji, you should read that conversation between Vidurji and Dhritarashtra. And it is so severe and it is so strong. And Vidurji has said, this is it. You have crossed a red line, not just a thin red line, but a thick red line. You're done. Now your destruction is completely assured. You are dead. You're a dead man walking, and your sons are dead men walking. That's it. So basically, Dhritarashtra got shaken to the core. Oh my God. What have I allowed to happen here? In the spur of the moment, he didn't realize what he was allowing to happen. And he was like so shaken. And especially he was shaken at the thought that your sons are going to be destroyed. So when he came to face with that consequence, he was shaken to the core, and he fell to the feet of Vidurji and said, what can I do to remedy this? And Vidurji said, it cannot be remedied. That's the first point. It cannot. It's irreversible at this point. But to, little bit save your honor, you should call back the Pandavas and return them everything that is possible to be returned. The insult cannot be returned, or cannot be repaired, but everything else you should. In one instant, he called the Pandavas and just simply nullified everything. He said, you get back everything, done, as if this didn't happen. It, of course, didn't erase the memories, but everything was restored to the Pandavas. And they went away to, or they started going away to Indraprasth. This, many people may not know, like that this happened. Then again, Duryodhan said, what the heck? We just played this whole trick and everything, and my father just gave it all away, back to square one. What the heck? Then Shakuni and Duryodhan and all go again to his dad, call them back for one more final match. And I promise we don't do anything bad or anything like that. If we win, we'll just tell them to go to the forest for 13 years. That's all. And if we lose, we will go to the forest. So they somehow convinced Dhritarashtra to call back Yudhishthir for this one final deal. And Yudhishthir had to agree. The messengers went all the way. They were halfway to Indraprasth. They called him back. One final match was played, and that's how the exile happened. Anyway, the point is that Vidurji could see that Dhritarashtra listens. That is the acceptance that he saw. And we see in our life also, in our family, in our very close family members mainly, this guy listens. Just that when he's completely off the track or off the rails, he may, disregard what I am saying. But in general, he listens, and may not say it. He's looking for my guidance. And that is the relationship that exists between, I have seen it in my family. Sometimes, I know in my children also, they correct me when I am going off track. And sometimes I shout at them and say, I don't need your advice and whatever. But in deep down, I'm listening. Yeah, this guy's making sense. I'm being a jerk. So, I hope you get what I'm saying.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. That's a beautiful context which I didn't know. So thank you so much for sharing.
Okay. Back to the original question. So how can we have a system in place where we can get constant reminders like Dhritarashtra is getting from Vidurji. It's very important in our life to have such systems. Any thoughts?
Can I say some words, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Dhritarashtra was very good and warrior. He was the king, but because of the attachments in human psychology, is also that but only because of the attachment, he knows Krishna is a favor of Pandavas, and Pandavas are very true and moral. But even though only the attachments, sons, like that, in my understanding, that Duryodhana is doing very bad, even though he struggled himself, what is wrong and what is right. He cannot say his son against. That is my understanding.
Thank you. Okay. So this is something very important that we should meditate upon in our spiritual life, because we may attend a Bhagavatam class here or there or read, unless we get that sort of a strong inspiration from within ourselves or through outside, either way, to make some big changes in our life. And day to day, maybe we have been wasting time for 2 weeks or something, then come out of it, oh my God, I've lost this much time. And so how do we create a system in our life that we can continuously stay fixed in our path of bhakti? Sometimes the chanting also is, good. Sometimes it is it's so. Most of the times it is so, at least for me. Or, whatever activities that we have taken for our bhakti, how do we get out of the uh, mechanicalness or the lethargy and get back to sincere and um, serious bhakti on a day-to-day basis? So that is something that is very important. And one of the things, so some thoughts I want to share is that we must have this kind of, now family is the closest to us, and the family members know our reality as well because they are staying with us all the time. Outside I can have a much nicer view, and much of the reality could be not visible outside. It's not like one is trying to actively hide or pretend, but still, and as part of etiquette, we don't ask, hey, have you, did you chant your rounds today? Did you read Bhagavatam today? How much did you read? Was your chanting nice, absorbed, or was it mechanical? It may not be in a proper etiquette to ask such questions, but we have to come up with a system in our life where we are reminded, hey, today your chanting was lousy, or you didn't do your rounds at all, or you have been piling up your rounds from last few days, or whatever may be the situation. Somebody need to call us out, make us look bad in our own eyes, so that we can make progress, not in a mean way. As you can see, even though last two verses back, Vidurji called Dhritarashtra a dog, but um, it was not, there was no meanness in that sense. Like there was no feeling within Vidura of any elation. Ah, I called him a dog. Now I feel peaceful. That feeling was not there. And even Dhritarashtra knows that when he's calling me a dog, he's not calling it because he's getting some pleasure out of it. In fact, it is very painful for Vidurji to say this to me. Dhritarashtra knows that. And that is that relationship between the two of them. Before the war, in the third canto, it is shown how Vidurji was trying to tell Dhritarashtra that, you should not listen to your son. He will bring destruction upon the family. And Dhritarashtra was actually quiet. He wasn't saying anything because he knew it was right. It was Duryodhan who was overhearing, and he said all the bad things to Vidurji and drove him out. And of course, Vidurji left again because Dhritarashtra remained silent. So Dhritarashtra's character is this of constant struggle between good and evil. The good that Vidurji is trying to tell and the evil that Duryodhan is trying to tell. And he was a man who could not distinguish between or discriminate between good and evil, or even if he was able to discriminate, he was not strong enough to choose the good and put his foot down on the evil. That was Dhritarashtra's problem. So now that Duryodhan is gone, and even after that insult in the third canto, Vidurji comes back. And that is the relationship that he has with Dhritarashtra. To be able to come back and speak so directly, not in a mean way, but really in a way that means well for Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra could definitely hear in Vidurji's voice that he means well for me. And that is that relationship that had developed between Vidur and Dhritarashtra, even though there was so much, so to say, poison in them in the relationship, that to the point where Vidurji was driven out by none other than Dhritarashtra's son and by approval of Dhritarashtra. Still, Vidurji felt that it is okay for me to come back and, try to fix this fellow who I care for. So I would give some credit to Dhritarashtra to build that kind of relationship, or it may be fortune, his luck, that he had such a person in his life who would come back and say such things to him to cause his spiritual progress. So it's very important for us as well. If that's the only point I want to make today, is that we must create such structures in our life that will cause us to wake up and realize that we have been missing out. The clock has been ticking, and we should wake up and start moving forward with vigor and enthusiasm. So that is the point of the discussion. And Guru plays a role, but our Diksha Guru, our official gurus may not do that. We have not, it's our fault. We have not given them that adhikar. If a guru sometimes says something strong, one may feel, disgust, or like, why is he saying like that? He doesn't have the right to say this. How can he say this to me? I did everything properly and still he said, oh, this food is not good, or this or that. So even if the guru chastises, we sometimes take it in a wrong way. I mean, first of all, we must be fortunate enough to receive chastisement from a guru. To that extent, we should have some relationship. And then if that happens, then we don't take it in the proper way. If we take it in the negative way, then we are being worse than Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was at least accepting what was being said. He was just being held back by his son. But if we try to retaliate even mentally or oppose, then we are worse than that. And so we have not allowed such a relationship to build between ourselves and our guru. So who are such people? And then, there is not enough contact, there is not enough opportunity and distance, and, whatever plays a role, all these things, the lack of closeness. So how can we have such situations in our life where we can get constant reminders, constant corrections? So we must come up with such structures. And one of the things in the last few minutes I wanted to focus on, that even if sometimes we can do it with family, but sometimes even that is not possible. Some people, the family relationship may itself be very formal or not so close. Then we have to look just to Mother Nature, or we have to build up our own strength to look at how we can learn from just looking things from far away. So, in my company where I work, there is this concept of mentoring, and there is this concept of distant or distance mentoring. And what is distance mentoring? It doesn't mean distance means over the phone or Zoom. Distance means you just observe others and you learn from their uh, successes and mistakes or failures. Just observe from far away. You don't need to have even they wouldn't even know. It could be a stranger. And this mainly is in terms of very senior levels, vice presidents or general managers and all. They may not even have the time. If I go and say, I want to be mentored by you, let us say, to a vice president or general manager who is looking after a $5 billion business, he doesn't have time to spend with me even 1 hour a month, which is less, is a lot of his time. 1 hour a month for a person who is managing a $5-10 billion business, he won't give it. So what can I get from how can I learn? Well, that is called distant mentoring. Just look at them how much ever you can. It's not like they will let you into your personal life or very close, but how much ever you can, you look and you learn. And also, it applies for failures, because nobody will go and tell others, this is how I failed, at least in the material world. And so, how do you learn from people's failures or mistakes if they are not going to tell it? Well, you have to observe and learn. So, or especially when they did, failure sounds more like, yeah, I did my best and I failed. But more like when they were being a jerk and then they failed, or then they were chastised, or they got caught and were punished. Nobody will tell that for sure, that I was being a jerk, I did all these bad things, and then I got the consequences. That nobody will tell, at least, openly. So how do we learn? And then so by observation. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I wanted to point out, we may not have time to go into it. There is a very beautiful section right in the beginning of Uddhav Gita. So I'm trying to make a session or a class out of it with some PowerPoints and all. But I'm just sharing with you that this is a very beautiful and very important section of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the very first chapter of Uddhav Gita. Uddhav Gita starts from chapter 7 of the 11th canto and goes till the end. And so here, Lord Krishna is about to depart, and he is giving his final bye-bye to Uddhav ji. And then Uddhav ji says, this whole conversation begins between Uddhav ji and Lord Krishna, and that is known as Uddhav Gita. So right here in the fourth verse, Lord Krishna says, O saintly Uddhava, in the near future, I will abandon this earth. Then being overwhelmed by the age of Kali, the earth will be bereft of all piety. So Lord Krishna is basically telling Uddhav ji, it's time for me to end my pastimes and leave. And he's giving instruction to Uddhav ji, you should also not remain here once I have abandoned. And you should know that this material world is completely temporary. Everything is just useless. And you should give up all attachment to your personal friends, relatives, etc. And the most important thing is fix your mind on me. So that is the instruction to us as well. Of course, Uddhavji doesn't need all these instructions, but through him, just like a intelligent mother will give instructions to his daughter-in-law through her own daughter. In the same way, Lord Krishna is telling Uddhavji for all of us. So as we go ahead, in this chapter, Lord Krishna mentions 24 gurus. And that is a very important thing. The concept of what I mentioned was, what was the concept I just mentioned? Anybody knows? Let's see who's listening.
Distance mentoring, Prabhu.
Mother Nature
Distant.
loves distance,
Okay.
observe and look and
Yes.
yeah, teach. If it is possible to teach them why, what is the matter, why he is like that. Maybe that is my understanding.
Yes. So the concept of distant or distance mentoring. So very beautiful. I kind of, again, not that those words have been used here, but I just from my side connected. Maybe I'm wrong. Please, forgive me. But this concept of distance mentoring is shown right here in Srimad Bhagavatam. And Lord Krishna begins to say that, he gives an allegory or a story of some king and a self-realized person. And the self-realized person was very young. So this king asks this self-realized person, hey, you seem to be very happy and all that, but you're so young. How can you have learned all this, self-realization, at such a young age? What caused you to learn? You look like you don't have a guru and all those things. How did you learn all this? And then that person says, I think here, yeah, in 33rd verse. So it's a very, very beautiful chapter, and you should learn or read and understand this chapter nicely. I could as well call this chapter, actually, that's a good name for the title of that talk or series that I will give, Distance Mentoring. That's a nice topic. So he says, O king, I have taken shelter of 24 gurus who are the following. The earth, so the five elements, Panchabhutas, first he mentions earth, air, sky, water, fire. Sun, moon, pigeon and the python, the sea, moth, honeybee, elephant, honey thief, deer, fish, the prostitute Pingala, whose story will come later, the kurara bird and the child, the young girl, the arrow maker, serpent, spider, and wasp. My dear king, by studying their activities, I have learned the science of the self. Perfect example of distant mentoring or distance mentoring. You can't talk to a spider or wasp or something, or you just have to see them, or to a mountain or whatever, earth, air. You can't talk. Maybe in Bhagavatam you can talk to a spider or a snake, but you can't talk to earth, air, sky, water, and so on. So how can we learn in this? And the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us that, but we must keep our eyes and ears always open to somehow see where we are going now. This is not easy. This is definitely not easy. Best is to have live mentors like Vidur and Dhritarashtra. Best is to have people in our family to help us, to guide us, and we must give them the adhikar. If we constantly shout at them, hey, never tell me like this, never talk to me like this, I don't need your advice, then it is useless. But if we give them the adhikar, it's okay once or twice we shout, but in general, we give the feeling to them, hey, I give you the adhikar, the right to correct me. And I believe that Dhritarashtra gave that adhikar to Vidurji. That was a nice question by Jayanitai Prabhu. So, which brought out this point of adhikar, even though a formal contract didn't exist, and no formal contract exists in family members or whatever. The marriage ceremony, you can say it exists, but between me and my children, for example, there was no marriage ceremony or no. He was just born as my son. That's it. Like it or not, the relationship started right there. So, in the same way, or between close friends, you don't have any official ceremony, but a close friend, for example, will not hesitate to tell you, hey dude, you're falling off the cliff, watch yourself. So in the same way, we must give the adhikar to some people who are our well-wishers and who we can count on, because we cannot see our blind spots. We can see other people's blind spots very easily, very easily, and that's just the nature. No need to fix that. Just make some other people responsible to see your blind spots and tell you. That's all. Very effective, very nice. But if we must give them the adhikar. So that is the best. If that is not possible, or in addition to that, we can also rely on some distance mentoring, by constantly learning from others, especially mistakes, and also from their successes, to see what they are doing right and constantly learn from them. So I could have gone more into all these 24 or few of them, But please read this chapter, very nice chapter on how to learn from even the most unlikely of sources. And 24 such sources have been mentioned here by this boy, Brahman boy, he says, no? My dear king, with my intelligence, I have taken shelter of so many spiritual masters. I having gained transcendental understanding from them, I now wander about the earth in a liberated condition. Please listen as I describe them to you. And then he gives a whole list. And then he describes one by one each of them. The rest of the chapter is all about what he learned from them. So, like a pigeon, one should never indulge in excessive affection or concern for anyone or anything. Otherwise, one will have to experience the great suffering just like the foolish pigeon. Then there is a couple of paragraphs on the pigeon. So each one has a few paragraphs, and the whole thing is being described. Okay. So I will stop here and see if there are any comments or questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I want to confirm my understanding. So I listened this chapter on Uddhav Gita from a devotee, and the learning I got was that this conversation between Krishna and Uddhava started when Krishna is saying that, okay, I'm leaving, Kali Yuga is starting, it's not a good place for you to stay. So, you do the necessary things. And Uddhava is like, no, he cannot, it's impossible for him to deal with the separation. That's when Krishna starts this this teaching of, you can use your intelligence. And then he tells all these things that, that there was this person who took Siksha from by observing all these things, distant mentoring. But at the same time, what I understood is that this is to be done by a person who has, progressed significantly in the path of bhakti, because with a contaminated intelligence and mind,
he will misinterpret.
Yes, exactly. So that's a pitfall, right? So even if we are observing a great devotee and we are trying to follow him, if we ourselves are contaminated, and we will be looking through that lenses and observing their faults. So how can we
go into all the finer aspects? But if for somebody for whom there is nobody that he can get any advice from, the last resort is to get it in this sort of a distant way. What else? I mean, one can say, okay, I don't have anybody to guide me I have no other source. I don't have Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't have shelter of anything. I will just continue to live a lousy life. That's not an option. So yes, there are definitely much better options. But what I'm saying is that in the absolute worst case, try to do it yourself.
Yes, Prabhuji, that makes sense. Thank you. I have one more thing I want to confirm with you. So you mentioned about, there was a history between Vidurji and Dhritarashtra, where, there was a history of Dhritarashtra listening to Vidura. That was the reason why, these instructions made a difference.
Of the empire, Dhritarashtra was blind. Who was running the empire? It was not Bhishma. Bhishma was like a grandfather or whatever, Pitamaha he was called. He was just like in modern India, president. President is sitting there doing nothing. That was pretty much the position of Bhishma Pitamaha. The whole country was being run by Vidurji. Go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. So what I'm saying is that I understand it's very important for having a mentoring relation, but you also mentioned about there. What I'm saying is like from the Vidur and Dhritarashtra history, it looks like there needs to be a relation which is built beforehand, because with that trust only we can actually open up our mind and then discuss. In this way. Yes, Prabhuji. In this way, what I'm saying is that before we actually start having this mentor relation, my understanding is that we should start forming the relation with a senior devotee or Vaishnava, like the nectar of instruction.
Be in your family also. is my point. Yes, so having that basic foundational relationship of communication, open communication, should be the first step before you start saying, please correct me if you see me going wrong. Yes, agreed.
Yes, Prabhuji. Sorry, just wanted to confirm. Yeah, thank you.
If, open communication should be there. Sometimes, the zip of my pant is down. People are seeing it, but they will not say it, hey, your zipper is down. That level of open communication doesn't exist. Somebody will say, hey, Prabhuji, your zip is down. Oh, sorry. I will turn around and pull up my zip. If that level of communication doesn't exist, then we should understand that, if I'm doing something, say bad or wrong, he will not going to come and tell me, hey, you're not, so that another thing is, it's our responsibility. We should assume the response. It's not like, oh, he doesn't talk to me. No, it's our responsibility to establish. We have to invest in the relationship, that to cultivate a relationship of openness, honesty, and directness. So we have to invest in such relationship building, and then go on to more serious matters about, being corrected when we are not doing the right thing in our spiritual life. That's way more, delicate than telling me to pull up my zipper, or more sensitive. So yes, we must invest in building such relationships.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
All right. Anything else?
Thanks, Shubho. Thank you so much. Wonderful class, Shubho. This beautiful class, starting of the Kripana verse, which I got reminded of 2.7. Prabhupada also gives a nice description of word Kripana, Karpane to show the verse. I remember of that. Very nice. Thank you for sharing, Prabhu, and also uh, sharing the importance of having someone in our life to put us back on track when we go off track. And mentioned the direct way, and also a new concept which I've never heard before, Prabhu, this distant mentoring. At least that particular term, I haven't heard. I haven't heard before, Prabhu. So thanks so much for sharing that, Prabhu. And I was thinking about this. We need to invest. When you and Janet Prabhu were talking to each other, the same thing. We need to invest in relationship in which we can be open and frank. Sometimes that reverence, or that superior, and if you're that infinite superior, oh, you are senior to me, and that kind of act as a block. Oh, and and that's, I feel like, but that's how we have Prabhu, we always want to serve them, be in a respectful position. That kind of acts as a barrier. So how do you suggest that, Prabhu, but to bring the guard down? Because I don't know, it's a long-term investment. I think, Prabhu, it would be short-term, but do you have any pointers, Prabhu, in that way? Anything, Prabhu?
No, I think it's a long-term investment, like you rightly said, very rightly said. And one way is to, open yourself up, make yourself vulnerable. You can go and share something, again, not just like that, for the heck of it. But sometimes, hey, Prabhuji, I made this mistake. Maybe it is something that other person you are building. First of all, you have to have somebody whom you can, some level of trust, and it starts building slowly and slowly. But if you feel close to a person, you can and trust. I did this and this. I made a mistake. You kind of were looking at it and seeing it. What do you think I could have done? How to correct myself? Open yourself up. Make yourself vulnerable. The best way to make a relationship deeper is to make yourself vulnerable. So it helps to what basically needs to go in a relationship is honesty. But you cannot demand honesty from the other person. You cannot say, Prabhu, please be honest with me. Honest. Yes, Prabhu, I'll 100%, I'll be honest. And next time they won't even tell you if your zipper is down. What kind of honesty is that? So you have to be, open up I made this mistake. I was being a jerk. Later on, I realized, I know you were also, or maybe you were not seeing or you were not there. How do you think? Make yourself vulnerable. Don't be honest about the other person. Okay. Hey, Prabhu, you did X, Y, Z. You're such a jerk. I'm being very honest with you, huh? You're such a jerk. That's the sure way of finishing a relationship. So be honest about yourself. And then they may think that, and they may open up. And that's how it can be the starting of a open, frank, close relationship. Vulnerability and honesty.
That makes sense, Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, we are way above the time. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. So just one thing, like Nathan Vilas Prabhu, I've heard, love and trust, give and take, that kind of statement about relationships between people. When you love and trust somebody, then there's give and take. If there's not love and trust, there's no give and take. I think, the challenge of opening yourself up to someone is kind of like the fear of being judged by somebody, that this guy's a bad guy or he's not really a devotee. So I think you have to find somebody who can, not judge you on the externals and see where your heart, I'm saying, sorry for saying you, but see where your heart lies. Is what I've heard from other senior devotees. And Janita Prabhu, the exchange between you and Parama Prabhu about Vidurji's position. I mean, when you think about it, Vidurji has always been the advisor and almost like a counselor for Dhritarashtra. Whether Dhritarashtra took that advice or not depends on his situation. I think Vidurji saw that at this point, Dhritarashtra was probably in a position where he could accept that advice. So I think sometimes opening the situation renders a person who previously he was not willing to accept advice from be somebody who at this point, the world had done enough things to Dhritarashtra in terms of blindness, death of his children, loss of a kingdom, that all his shelters were essentially taken away. And so at that point, he was willing to hear out Vidurji, whereas previously he would neglect him as a prime minister and a counselor. So they did have a relationship, and Vidurji was driven by that extraordinary love he had for Dhritarashtra. So that's the way I understood this chapter. It's a pretty heavy chapter where somebody's just hammering at you and telling you how you're decaying and dying and at many levels, and you better get going. Vidurji didn't say anything about Krishna's departure to the Pandavas because he knew that would hurt the Pandavas in a very deep way. But he was open to saying some strong things to Dhritarashtra, because he knew that's what Dhritarashtra needed at this point, and he had enough love that he was willing to put that relationship on the line. Prabhu, you want to add something? I'm sorry.
Points, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you for the perspective. Very nice.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with the Gita. I really liked where he said, I'm learning from them by watching their activity. I think, can you show that verse again that you were showing that in Uddhav Gita at the very beginning when he names, the various groups? That was I thought that was very nice portion of that statement.
This one.
The one next one, 33, that's 35. He says, my dear king, by studying the activities, I've learned the science of the self.
Yeah.
So I thought that was, that's kind of how all people learn, even one learns from one's initiating or instructing guru through the process of, studying how they behave, how they react.
Yeah.
That's what, example is always better than instruction for our, like you were mentioning, children and how it can be hard to hear strong things by one's you know, own family. So I think by studying the activity and realizing they're coming from a position of trying to do good, one can accept it. I like that verse, studying their activities. That's how I learned the science of the self.
Yeah.
Okay, like you said, we're probably way over. Does anybody else have questions or comments on this section? Should we end Paramakirpa?
Yeah.
Panchakalpatrubhyacha kripasindhabhyacha Sampavnabhya Vaishnavya Namo Namo. Thank you all. See you at the temple.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.